So we've looked at new ways of designing, ways of changing the path we follow when we're designing new websites, new landing pages, ad campaigns, the whole 9 yards. We haven't really talked a lot about conversion optimization. Well, we're going to do that now. And we're going to divide it into two primary sections. There is pre-launch optimization and post-launch optimization. Now, when we think of conversion rate optimization, we're usually thinking of post-launch optimization, where we take an existing website, an existing landing page, an existing campaign, and we optimize that. We try to make that better. What we do here at Conversion Sciences, and my gift to you as a part of this masterclass, is understanding how we are good at post-launch optimization by being good at pre-launch optimization. So a little distinction between the two if you need. Pre-launch optimization really deals with that part of this new way of designing that happens, as the name implies, before you launch, before you spit the entire budget at the campaign and push it out the door. So the user research that we're doing, the copy research that we're doing, any image studies that we're doing, all of this is done before the campaign launches, typically with mock-ups as opposed to live pages. Once the site is approved and launched, or the landing page or the campaign, then we can do this wonderful post-launch optimization. The advantage, of course, of the post-launch optimization is that this is where we get to use this delicious real behavioral data. And we're going to talk about the distinction between the pre-launch data and the post-launch data and how we size it up and use it to make decisions. When we're doing pre-launch optimization, we're using more traditional, what used to be called qualitative types of studies. We're actually going to design our quote-unquote qualitative studies, things like online surveys, online focus groups, user testing, and eye tracking. We're going to be using these as much as we can in a way that looks like an A/B split test. And we'll talk about how we do that. After we launch, after the thing goes live, we get this delicious, as I said, delicious behavioral data through analytics, our A/B testing software, heat maps, mouse tracking, session recordings, and then on-site surveys where real prospects and customers are coming and interacting with our creative and voting with their wallets and with their contact information, with their clicks on what they like or don't like about what we're doing. Before we get started, one of the things that you're going to hear when you start presenting pre-launch data is that, oh, it's small sample size, et cetera, et cetera. If we understand what we're getting into, if we understand how to grade the data, then we can make good decisions about whether or not to base our decisions on the data that we're collecting. Remember, we're going to be doing experiments all the way through the design process and then into the post-launch period. And it is normal to have inconclusive tests. You think that if you're going to run for instance, an online panel to look at some of your mock-ups, that you're going to get a good comparison between 2 or 3 choices. It's not always going to happen. Sometimes it's going to be a wash. You have to be okay with that because this is the way we build confidence. It is both a way of learning that the path we're on is good, that all 3 are bad, but it buys us a kind of insurance on our design. It's an insurance policy for bad marketing so that we don't launch things that aren't going to generate leads and sales. So the first rule of behavioral science is that the bigger sample size is better. We've addressed this a few times in this video series, and we've talked about it on the phone calls. The larger the sample size, the more likely the results of any test on that sample size is going to predict the future behavior of the larger audience. Data over time is better. So if we can collect data over a longer period of time, especially over a period of time that traverses our business trends that we talked about in the analytics portion of this, then we know that the data is including both the up and the down times in our patterns, and that we believe then they will do a better job of predicting the future of our campaigns and of our website. More recent data is better than older data. If we had a choice, we would rather work with more recent data because that tells us the current state of the market. It gives us data collected over the current state of our own campaigns, our own traffic, and that is going to do a better job of predicting the future if we assume that going forward, as we usually do, things are going to look pretty much the same as they do today. And blindness. When we're doing surveys, when we're doing focus groups, the people we're dealing with, the participants, know that they're being asked to take a test. They know they're being tested. In some cases, we're asking them what they think or asking them to do tasks where we're even asking their opinion. We don't recommend that, and we will talk about why that's not a good idea. But nonetheless, they're going to behave differently because they know they're being tested. Likewise, when we're dealing with a focus group, online surveys, we get clues about who is speaking to us. A handwritten survey, for instance, in a live focus group, we could tell from the handwriting if we think this person is male or female, and if we have any biases about gender, then we will bring those to our decisions and weight their inputs as more heavy or less heavy based on what we believe about the credibility of a particular gender. So, did you like how I kind of danced around that touchy subject? We want to make sure that we're not bringing our own biases to the table and that the participants aren't bringing their biases. Sometimes we don't have that choice, but we know that if we have a blind or double-blind study, that we put more stock in the feedback and the behaviors that we're getting from that. Customers and prospects are better than pretenders. So when we do a panel, when we do a focus group, we are generally asking strangers to come in and pretend to be our customers and our prospects. We're going to try to give them the best tools we can to help them do that, but ultimately they're not trying to solve the problems that we're solving, and therefore the data is going to be suspect. So we need to take that into account. If we sell a product that is a commodity product that most people use, then we can trust the opinions of those customers and prospects, the participants rather, a little bit more because it's easier for them to imagine buying that because most likely they have purchased a pair of shoes, clothing, things like that we've all had an experience with. And quantitative data is more reliable than qualitative data about predicting the future. So here the distinction between quantitative and qualitative is this. When we collect quantitative data, we're asking a question that's going to give us a similar answer from everyone. It can be on a range, what we call a Likert scale, where they tell us on a scale of 1 to 5 what they think of something, or a net promoter score is on a scale of 1 to 10 for some reason, or they can tell us if they strongly agree to strongly disagree with a statement. These are all measured in a set of canned responses. So we can actually do some analysis on them and compare the answers from, say, one participant group that saw one of our mock-ups and another participant group that saw another of our mock-ups. Qualitative data, though, we will accept different answers from anyone. So we ask open-ended questions, and we're interested in some of the juicy, emotional, and answers that tell us why, what people are thinking, what their emotions are, and also tell us what kind of wording they use when they talk about what we're asking them to talk about. So quantitative data can be used better to predict the future. Qualitative data is great for getting baseline information, great at the beginning of design processes to see if we're on the right path or to direct our path. So these are the 6 rules. If we were to, for instance, score one kind of data, let's take a look at how we might do that. Let's score this data. You sent a survey to 1,000 current customers asking them about their experience buying from your website. 79 of them responded. Not a bad response rate. Anywhere between 5% and 25% would be the response rates that you typically see, and we're always very happy to see something around 25%. So let's check each of these and score this data. Number one, are the participants blind? Well, they know that they're getting a survey and that we're asking them questions, so no, they're not. They know they're being tested. Are the testers blind? They can be blind if we use an online survey and aggregate the data, but in general, we'll find that the testers are not blind and they can pick up some clues as to who's answering specific questions, and we can bring our biases to that. So we'll not give it a point there. What is the sample size? Well, is the sample size 1,000? We sent it to 1,000 people. In this case, the sample size is 79, the number of people who responded. Just as in our motherboard example, the number of people who filled out a review reflects the size of the entire population. So sample size is not large at 79, although larger than most of our focus group and panels will be. Is it behavioral data? Are we watching how they behave? Well, no, we're asking them questions and asking them to report on what they think or how they would behave. Is it quantitative data? A survey will generally be a mix of both. As I said, we could put things on a Likert scale, on a scale of 1 to 5. We could ask them to select things from a list, which gives us a more standardized response. But on the open-ended questions where we're trying to collect information about how they feel and how they speak about this problem, that will be more qualitative. So we'll give this a check because we can design a survey that is 100% quantitative. It's recent. Yes, it is. We will have just sent it. So it is checking the state of our customers at this point in time. So we get a check there, and it's collected over time. No, the surveys generally are sent on a short term and are over within a few days. These are usually sent out by email or something like that. If we had an ongoing survey on our site and over time it collected these 79 responses, we might give this a higher grade that was collected over the course of an entire week, the entire month, or whatever our seasonality, our business cycles are. So if we look at this, we've got a count of 2 if we are generous. This data doesn't score well on the behavioral data scale. What does this mean? Well, let's say, for instance, that we have 2 mock-ups of a page and we want 25 people to look at each and complete some tasks. And we're going to see how quickly they can complete those tasks, if they complete them correctly. If we see a big difference between the 2, then we would perhaps use that data. And by big difference, I mean a 50%, 80%, or 100% difference in the ability of the different participant groups to complete on those quantitative tasks that we gave them. If it was a small spread, 20%, 30%, even 40%, we would say it was probably inconclusive. Even though it looks like one of them was 40% better, we really can't use that with this small data. That we might use that as a tiebreaker on some other data, but ultimately we would call that inconclusive and say that both performed about the same. So do you see how we use that? We can put stock in big swings if we have data that doesn't score well, but we can't put stock in small swings if the data is not statistically and behaviorally interesting. Here's a model about kind of how you would use different kinds of testing methods. On this is another quadrant. I love the quadrants. This is brought to us by Christian Rohr. And on one axis is the scale of behavioral to attitudinal. So behavioral data is where we watch them behave. Attitudinal is where we ask them what they think. And then we have qualitative data along the X scale, qualitative or direct request data versus quantitative, where we're measuring something indirectly, or as I put it, we're measuring something consistently that can be measured. So when we've got, when we want to know why something is broken or how to fix it, we'll generally ask for more qualitative data. When we want to know how people are going to behave, what people do, we're looking for behavioral data. And this falls into the category of analytics, heat map reports, scroll tracking reports, session recordings, and A/B testing. When we want to know how many or how much, we want to get some quantitative data on how people are interacting, then we will ask quantitative questions somewhere on that behavioral attitudinal scale. And if we want to know what people say, how people speak, what words they use, what they think, it will be very attitudinal. So this is a nice way of understanding which tests you would use. Why and how to fix it, that might be a survey. What people do, as I said, analytics, A/B tests, things like that. How many and how much, that would be where we give them a task and ask them to complete a task and see how long it takes them to do it and if they're successful. And then what people say is going to be things like focus groups and online panels.